Rain poured down in thick, cold sheets as little Ava stood at the heavy glass doors of the skyscraper, her tiny hands trembling around a soaked photo. Her pink dress was muddy, her hair sticking to her cheeks. But what struck the receptionist most wasn't how lost she looked, it was the way she kept staring up at the man on the large billboard outside. "That's him," Ava whispered to herself. "That's the man in Mummy's drawer." The receptionist leaned forward. "Sweetheart, are you lost? Where's your mummy?" Ava bit her lip hard, holding back tears. "She's downstairs. She told me to wait here and give this to Mr. Alexander Grayson." She placed the crumpled photo on the counter. It showed a younger Grayson with a woman, Ava's mother, laughing beside him in a cafe. The receptionist froze. That woman wasn't just anyone. She was the reason Grayson hadn't smiled in over a decade. Upstairs, Alexander Grayson was known for being ice-cold, ruthless in boardrooms, silent in meetings, never distracted. But when his secretary barged in, holding a child's photo in trembling fingers, his brows furrowed. "What is this?" he snapped. "Sir, ... There's a little girl downstairs. She says it's urgent." He snatched the photo. His fingers froze. Mid-air time seemed to slip backward. That smile, those eyes, memories he'd buried, deep jolted awake. Grayson stood, something unreadable flickering across his face. "Bring her up," he said quietly. Not yelled, not ordered, just said. When Ava entered the room, her lip was trembling. Grayson stared at her like a ghost had walked in. She was the spitting image of someone he once knew, someone he once ruined. "What's your name?" he asked, voice low. "Ava," she whispered. "And what do you want, Ava?" She reached into her tiny backpack, pulling out a letter. With shaky hands, "My mummy's sick. She doesn't have anyone. She always said you were a good man once. She said you were her only mistake, and her only hope. Please, can you marry her?" The room fell silent. Grayson's jaw locked. "Marry," he repeated, as if the word itself offended him. "She's all I've got left now," Ava said, her voice cracking. "She told me if anything ever happened, I should come to you." Grayson turned his back to her, walking toward the window. His fingers tightened into a fist. He had built empires, crushed competitors, and never once looked back. But today, a child's broken voice had cracked something in him. He could feel it. The ache, the guilt, the regret, crawling back from a past he thought was dead. He didn't answer her. Not yet. Instead, he asked one thing. "Where is your mother now?" Ava's eyes welled up again. "In the hospital. She fainted right after we got here. They said it's serious, and she might not wake up again." Grayson didn't say a word. He just walked past the little girl, straight to the elevator, heart pounding. Because deep down, even if he didn't want to admit it, he knew he had broken a woman once. And now, fate had sent her daughter to break him back. The hospital hallway smelled like antiseptic and desperation. Grayson walked in, his long coat trailing behind him, the click of his shoes echoing off the cold tile. He didn't belong here, not in a place full of weak whispers, quiet cries, and broken hope. But Ava held his hand tightly, leading him through it all, as if he wasn't the cold millionaire anymore, but just a man who owed something. They stopped outside the ICU, through the glass. He saw her, Elise, pale, unconscious, tubes running through her arms, her chest barely rising beneath the hospital gown. Her beauty hadn't faded, but it was different now, fragile. And that fragility hit him harder than he ever thought possible. "She doesn't know I came here," Ava said softly. "She doesn't know I found you, but I had to, because if she dies," her voice cracked, "I'll have no one." Grayson didn't speak. He stared at the woman he once left behind, memories rushing in like a flood. The laughter they shared, the promises he made and broke. Elise had been the only woman who didn't want his money or his name. She had wanted him, and that's exactly why he pushed her away. Because the real him, the boy behind the name Grayson, had been broken long before he ever met her. A nurse walked over, glancing at Ava, then at Grayson. "Are you the father?" she asked gently. Grayson hesitated. Ava looked up at him, eyes wide and pleading, and something inside him shifted. Yes, he said. Yes, I am. The nurse nodded and whispered, she's not stable. The infection spread quickly. If she doesn't wake up in the next 12 hours, the damage might be irreversible. Grayson turned back toward the glass, his chest tightened. For years, he had been empty, hollowed out by ambition and guilt. But now, the woman he once walked away from was fighting for her life, and the little girl who called him sir believed he was her only hope. Later that night, Grayson sat alone in the hospital chapel. It was quiet, dimly lit. He wasn't a praying man. But for the first time in years, he wanted to believe someone up there was listening. I never thought I'd see her again, he whispered. I don't even know if she'd want to see me. But that little girl, she sees something in me I don't deserve. Just then, Ava entered quietly. She climbed onto the bench beside him and took his hand. Mummy always said, you are the kind of man who runs from love, she said. But I don't think you're running anymore. Grayson looked down at her, his expression unreadable. And what if I told you I'm still not the kind of man your mum deserves? Ava shrugged. Then be better, please. Her words were simple, but they cut deep. For the first time, Grayson didn't feel powerful. He felt small, human, vulnerable. The next morning, Elise stirred. ChatGPT said Elise's eyelids fluttered, opened slowly, the harsh white lights of the hospital ceiling blurring into view. Her throat felt dry, her body heavy, and everything ached in a dull, distant way. But the moment she saw the small figure curled up beside her bed, peace washed over. Her Ava, her little girl, was safe. Elise raised her hand weakly to touch her daughter's hair. But before she could, a deeper voice spoke from the corner of the room. She hasn't left your side all night. Elise's breath caught in her throat. That voice she hadn't heard it in nearly 9 years, but her soul recognized it instantly. She turned her head slowly, and there he was, Alexander Grayson, standing in the shadows of her hospital room like a ghost from a past she tried so hard to bury. Her heartbeat sped up, not from love, but from the flood of everything he once made her feel: betrayal, pain, heartbreak. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice weak but sharp. Grayson stepped closer, the distance between them closing like an old wound reopening. Your daughter came to my office yesterday. She asked me to marry you. Elise closed her eyes. A bitter laugh escaped her dry lips. Of course she did. Ava believes in fairy tales. She thinks everyone who leaves will come back if you just love them enough. I never knew about her, Grayson said quietly. You left before you could tell me. Elise opened her eyes again, this time meeting his. I left because you made it very clear there was no room in your life for someone like me. You told me love was a distraction. That I was a distraction. He didn't deny it, he couldn't. I was wrong. Yes, she whispered, tears forming. You were. But by the time you'd realize that, I didn't have the strength to wait around. Grayson sat in the chair beside her bed. It was the first time in years he'd sat so still. She's smart, Elise, brave. She reminds me of you. Elise turned her head toward Ava, who was still sleeping peacefully. She deserved a father. Someone to protect her, not just a name on a birth certificate. I can still be that, he said, surprising even himself with how much he meant it. Elise looked at him, exhaustion written in every line on her face. Why now, Grayson? Because your past came knocking, or because, for once, you couldn't hide behind your money? He didn't flinch. Because for the first time in years, I realized everything I built means nothing if I lose what I walked away from. The room went silent, filled only with the soft beeping of machines. Elise looked away. You're too late. I don't believe that, he said quietly. Not if you're still breathing. Not if Ava still believes in us. Elise closed her eyes again, not because she was tired, but because she didn't know how to look at him without falling apart. What do you want from me? Grayson leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice low. A second chance. Not because I deserve it, but because maybe you still do. Elise was discharged 3 days later. The hospital staff was surprised at how quickly her vitals had stabilized. But no one knew the real reason. It was the moment she opened her eyes and saw Ava safe. And the man she once loved, broken and quietly waiting. Something in her heart had softened, though the wall hadn't fallen, not yet. Grayson personally handled everything, the best doctors, private nurses, and a car waiting outside. Elise refused to go with him at first. "I'm not one of your corporate projects you can just fix and walk away from again," she had snapped. But Ava, clinging to her hand, had whispered, "Please, Mummy, let's try." And that was all it took. His penthouse was cold, all glass, metal, and silence. Elise had expected that. What she hadn't expected was how awkward Grayson seemed in his own home, as if suddenly realizing it was built to impress strangers, not shelter a family. Ava ran from room to room, her laughter echoing in the emptiness. Elise just stood in the middle, watching him. "Why now?" she asked again. He stood near the window, back to her. "Because I'd been rich for years, Elise. But I only started feeling poor the day you left." That night, Ava made them both sit at the dining table, a small thing, but it felt like a crack in a wall that had stood too long. Grayson was quiet. Elise watched him from across the table, her fingers nervously tracing the glass. And then, without warning, she asked, "Do you know what happened after I left?" He looked up. "No. I was going to tell you about Ava. But I lost my job. Then the apartment. I was homeless when I gave birth to her." His hand stiffened around the fork. "Why didn't you ask me for help?" "Because I wasn't going to beg a man who threw me away to rescue the child he never wanted." Grayson's voice was tight. "Don't ever say I didn't want her, I didn't know." "If I had, but you didn't," she cut in, tears building. "Again, and I swore I'd never let her feel unwanted, even if I had to lie. Even if I had to smile through every night we slept in a shelter." Grayson stood. The guilt in his chest burned, suffocating. "I can't undo what I did, but I want to do what's right now." Elise's voice dropped. "And what if what's right isn't you?" He didn't respond, because, deep down, he knew it might be true. That night, Ava snuck into Elise's bed, whispering, "Do you think he really loves us?" Elise held her close. "I don't know, baby. Some men love with their words, but real love, it shows up." Over and over, in the hallway, Grayson stood just out of sight. And for the first time in his life, he didn't know if showing up would be enough. 2 weeks passed. Slowly, something started to shift. Grayson began coming home earlier. He learned how to make Ava's favorite cereal without burning it. He took her to school, even stayed for her parent day, awkward in his tailored suit. But there, Elise watched it all with quiet caution, waiting for the cracks to show, for the man she once knew to disappear again. But he didn't. He stayed. One rainy evening, Elise sat on the balcony, sipping tea, wrapped in one of Grayson's coats. He joined her, setting down a small velvet box between them. She didn't touch it. "I'm not asking for a fantasy," he said softly. "I'm asking for a chance. For us, not because of Ava, but because I'm finally ready to fight for what I should have never lost." Elise looked at the box. "You think a ring will fix 9 years?" "No," he replied, "but maybe it can help build the next 50. She didn't open the box, not yet, but for the first time, she didn't push him away. That night, as Ava slept soundly, Elise wandered into Grayson's office. She found an old photo on his desk, the same one Ava had carried, but there was another one now, a recent picture of the three of them, taken outside the hospital. Her fingers trembled as she turned it over. On the back, in his handwriting, were the words, "The moment I found everything I didn't know, I was missing." Suddenly, a loud crash came from downstairs. Elise rushed out, heart pounding. Grayson was already at the front door, security alarm blaring. 2 masked men had broken in, trying to rob the place. One had grabbed Ava, dragging her toward the door. Elise screamed, but Grayson moved faster than she'd ever seen. He didn't hesitate. He fought like a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. By the time security arrived, Ava was safe, and one of the intruders was already unconscious later, sitting on the floor, holding Ava in her arms. Elise looked at Grayson, bleeding, shaken but still there. He had risked his life for them, and that changed everything. The next morning, Elise woke early. Grayson was sitting beside her, holding her hand like he was afraid she'd vanish again. She took the velvet box and opened it, not because she needed the diamond, but because the man offering it had finally become someone she could believe in again. "I'm not saying yes because I need saving," she said, voice steady. "I'm saying yes because this time, you showed up. And you didn't run." He kissed her hand, eyes glistening. "I'm not going anywhere." Ava burst into the room, smiling. "Does this mean we're a family now?" Elise pulled her close. "We already were, sweetheart. We just didn't know it yet."